Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210. Streaming worldwide, we are full on extraterrestrial radio here. We thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And it is an honor for me now to bring in a bit of an avatar, somebody who has done quite a few things and continues to paint on his palette. A guy who has served in our military, has seen the worst of human mankind, has also been opened and enlightened through streams of consciousness with legal and pure LSD at the Longshoremen's Hall in San Francisco. Ken Babbs, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Good to hear you, brother. I wanted to ask you straight off, can you describe, I was born in 1978, and I look at some of these shows, we let in with one of these Ken Babbs Thunder Machines. Can you talk, first of all, about what that looked like on stage? Because the one we played was from Eugene, and it was a show that right after Kesey's son had perished in a bus accident, and I wanted you to talk about what that looked like and just paint that picture for the audience.
Well, the Thunder Machine was quite a rig. It was the original one was made by the sculptor Ron Boise. And it was made out of car parts. That's what he used all the time, hoods and fenders and stuff like that. And he fashioned this machine that also had bicycle wheels, and you could pull it around. It was kind of elongated, and it had a thing that went up the top, but it was all wired with guitar strings that you could pluck and twang, and it was all electrified with gizmos in there that would make echoes and that kind of stuff. And then it also had a microphone for talking through. And then so Kesey usually sat in the Thunder Machine in the chair and ran it and played the strings, but other people would gather around it and bling and dong ding ding dong dong on it with their fingers and even little mallets. And it had a tube that came out of it with a connection where I could hook my trombone to it, and I could play my trombone into it at the same time.
Okay, so wait a minute, because there's this we didn't play that part, but it almost sounds like a flugelhorn. Is that actually your trombone playing?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I listened to that. I'll tell you, that's May 8th, 1984. And it's like, it sounds like a Louis Armstrong flugelhorn kind of thing. But you're saying that's a bone. That's your bone. You play the trombone.
Trombone, yes. You've heard of the bone. He says it's like the guy who said that I hated every bone in her body except mine.
No, but Ken, I mean, so you would. Would you have any verbal riffs as well? I'm trying to figure, because some of the stuff is just epic, I mean, I don't know if it's Kesey or if it's you. Inevitably, it always turned up in these small venues or these basketball arenas, and I'm like, I want to know exactly what Babbs was doing with the Thunder Machine besides the bone.
Well, we also had microphones around set up that we could talk into, and you would hear my rap over that, because Kesey would be the one inside the Thunder Machine. I've never heard this tape you're talking about. Where is it? Where can I hear it?
I'm gonna send it to you, man. It is the most scintillating. First of all, you're the one that says the president gets a nice piece of ass. You have to hear this stuff. I mean, if that's you, I've been laughing in stitches about this. I'll send you a link to it because it's brilliant, and ultimately you're channeling stuff that you guys started 20 years earlier. But it's just an honor to talk to you, man. And I wanted to I had to talk to you a little bit about this idea of the creative writing that you were doing prior to getting the Woodrow Wilson Scholarship. Can you talk about some of the stuff that you were writing about that allowed you to get this fellowship?
Well, I graduated from Miami University in Ohio and took a creative writing course from the professor there, and he encouraged me to write. And the story I wrote that he really liked was called Crabs, and it consisted of a guy that was sleeping on the beach down in Florida, and as he was sleeping, these crabs all came up on the beach, and he woke up to find himself covered with crabs nibbling on him, and it was kind of a weird science fiction, funny, goofy story. And this has always been my bit, really. And this Walter Havinghurst, the professor, it really encouraged me. Before that, I'd like to write and everything, but I never really considered myself as a writer or thought of it as being a profession. In fact, when I got my Woodrow Wilson Fellowship to Stanford, I got it under the, what would you say, the application that I wanted. I was thinking about being a college teacher, and that's what they were looking for. And, you know, it was quite a funny coincidence because Kesey and I met at Stanford in 1959, and he also had gotten the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship. But he was really serious about writing himself. He had spent the year before that in Hollywood thinking maybe he could get into the movies, but he got beat out by Paul Newman and his big blue eyes rather than Kesey.
Sure.
They were very similar. And so he spent most of his time there writing screenplays and stuff.
Would you say, you know, as objectively as you could, that it was more about, you weren't necessarily passionate about writing, you were thinking, I'll go in because they're looking for professors, as opposed to Kesey, who was real dedicated to it?
I would say that it was my sixth year in college, and I was pretty much tired of the whole thing. But Stanford was wonderful. I had come from Ohio, driven my old 48 Pontiac with my big dog Gus in the seat beside me all the way across country. Got to San Francisco, and I could not believe it. I mean, it took me 2 weeks to get from San Francisco to 30 miles to Palo Alto. And I knew when I got to California, I was never going to live in Ohio. What was that?
It was a little glitch, you know. We got the spirits talking to us now.
Well, I thought maybe I said something so dirty, I beeped out.
No, just if you're on a landline, careful you're not touching those buttons. But yeah, I mean, it's at this point, you know, people are looking down on us, man.
Well, they better hadn't looked down on us because that's our whole scene. We like to get real low down and have people look down on us.
You know, I want to talk to you about when you did make that 30-mile venture, that because East Palo Alto was very much African American. Can you talk about some of the jazz gigs that you guys were checking out, and even some of the possible you know, poetry that or you know, riff spoken word that you were playing being backed up by black jazzers? I think that it gets overlooked. I mean, Stanford, great institution. East Palo Alto is where you guys were marinating, I got to believe.
Well, actually, East Palo Alto on the other side of the freeway was a ways from Stanford. We never went to East Palo Alto and had no reason to. Never even occurred to us. All the scenes that we were involved in were around Menlo Park and Palo Alto along Old Highway 101, you know, the old highway, not the freeway. But I did live in when I was going there in what they called Whiskey Gulch, because Palo Alto was kind of a dry town because of the university, and there was only one place where they had liquor stores, and it was right there, right next to the freeway, Whiskey Gulch. But we would go to whatever jazz scenes we could find, mostly up in the city, in San Francisco. Although one place in Palo Alto we did go to here.
It's called the Poppycock?
It could have been the Poppycock.
Yeah,
that's a familiar place.
I mean, I want to know specifically, did you see, did Mingus Coltrane Max, those cats, how much of an impact did that freedom and that expression impact you guys?
Very much. We were big time on the beats and big time on that jazz when On the Road came out in 1957, the same year that we both graduated from college. We were taken up with that book because being kind of, in the writing wannabes, to see that Kerouac was writing in a new free-form jazz type way, which frees you from that whole thing of creating in your mind, working it out in your mind, and then typing up what you were thinking about, instead of just letting it run off the tips of your fingers onto the typewriter or the pen without thinking about it beforehand. It's a wonderful thing, and it still is a way for me to write. It's Neil Cassidy was the beat guru who taught Kerouac, and us too when we got to know him, which is the beat, the lag. The lag is the 1/30th of a second it takes for a thought to go from your mind out through your mouth or the pen and all that. And race car drivers, and Neil was a real race car driver fanatic, talked about him all the time and drove like he thought he was a race car driver.
Yeah, I know.
He said that the race car drivers could shorten that lag. Their reaction time was so fast, it had to be, at 250 miles an hour in a pack of maniacs. It was jazz of that time, and then Kerouac's writing of that time, and a lot of the beat writers of that time were a big influence on us, and we tried to follow in their footsteps.
This is extremely important for my generation and younger future generations, because like with jazzers, that improvisational mentality, the melodic improvisation, that comes only when the rudiments and the technique are there. Otherwise it's just gibberish. So what I'm saying is, did you have to have your writing chops together in order to meet that quick lag, right? I mean, you can't just, otherwise it's just essentially diarrhea. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. You have to have your chops down, and you have to have them so good, and your typing skills so good. If you, like me, I type almost everything, and that doesn't get in the way, or like you say, it doesn't become just what do we call that, mind rot spilling out on the page.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Cassie, this is what Cassie was good at. He wasn't he liked his bennies and his crosstops, and for the hits he gave him. But he was not a motor mouth speed rapper, saying just whatever. He always had a point, and he always had a story he'd tell, and he was, really the other big influence on us you can't dismiss or cut short is the Psychedelics, in which you are able to go into regular time, out of regular time. You deal with the past, present, and the future all happening at once in a Aristotelian sequence that you put it in order so people can understand it. But this also frees you in the same way as beating the lag. And so the two things together really became our thing that we contributed to and were part of in the 60s, and continues to exist today, even more so in music and spoken word and poetry slams and places like that. I'll tell you, now listening to jazz is like listening to conventional jazz, is like listening to symphonic music, classical music. It's all wonderful, and you really admire the people for doing it. But it is kind of fixed in its own way, in which these guys do these same songs over and over again.
Babbs, I cannot. It's all formulaic. There's nothing visceral. There's nothing coming. There's no whether it's Jean-Luc Ponty or whether it's Randy Weston or I don't care who it is that I've interviewed. It's all, to me, I'm searching for the burning jazz. Today it is pacification, Babbs. So I think you might have poetry sit-ins now, but what you're talking about is that psychedelic experience. I'm not saying that some of those jazzers were taking psychedelics, but that's the pathway towards the burning music.
Yeah.
In my mind, that's what I'd like to get your thoughts on it, because you nailed it, man. This is the classicalization of jazz. It's a disaster. It really is a disaster.
Well, you're right about that, but it's an old form. And Cassie talked about that a lot. He says, "Oh, the problem is he's caught in an old form, an old dead form, and so he becomes an old dead thing." But the one I still listen to a lot and love is Rashawn Roland Kirk. I mean, he really went out there.
Well, it's funny. I just interviewed Steve Earle before I came in here, and he just was talking about Rip Rag and Panic. Rashawn Roland Kirk doing the multiple reads, which was just, I mean. I guess the other question is, can you talk to the audience about when you started with Kesey, this idea of this lag, what I forget what you just coined it as, but catching the lag when you started to do this improvisational writing. Can you talk about one of the pieces you did and early on, and when you were getting your chops together, and how your professors received it at the college?
Well, Kesey. When he even then was working on bits, that he had gotten this job at the mental hospital there in the VA hospital in Menlo Park, and he was observing these people in the wards, and he was writing sketches about that. My sketches mostly were about things that I'd get involved in, like up in San Francisco at a spoken word thing where getting up and talking, and reactions to the people. And things around the campus and that. I was pretty square in that respect at that time. I hadn't really cut loose. Well, for one thing, I hadn't taken LSD yet, and Kesey did in those experiments he got involved with at the hospital, so he was already getting psychedelicized.
So can you articulate the Babbs, the square Babbs, and then when you crossed over into the swampadelica or psychedelica world, how essentially, how your not even your how did your writing change? Did your writing change?
Oh yes. Well, here's what it was all about. Is I was in Naval ROTC when I went through college because, in those days everybody had to go in the military as something, the draft and all. And so I decided I'd get in this program and go in as an officer. Well, it was a Navy program, but then I found out you could take the Marine option because I was on a ship one summer, a midi cruise, and I hated it. I was going to get out of the program. And so anyway, the Marine major said, you can take the Marine option. So that's what I did. So here you got this guy. I went after Stanford right into the Marine Corps for 5 years and flew helicopters and was in Vietnam for a year. And as they say, in 1964, I got off the helicopter and on the bus.
But I just want to be clear. When you went to Vietnam, you did not know, there was no full interconnection. So you wound up as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, but you were still corresponding with Kesey. Is that right?
Oh, all the time. In fact, from the time I left Stanford, and he stayed another year, and then really got into One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we would write long letters back and forth, and every chance I had, I'd go visiting there. I know when I was stationed in California before we went overseas, I'd take the chopper out on a weekend run and go up there and stay with him for the weekend. And by this time, I had been psychedelicized, although that I kept the two separate. I mean, you can't be flying helicopters and doing all that stuff and be in Vietnam. Well, Vietnam was psychedelic without any drugs, but so you can't be doing that at the same time.
Well,
anyway, you were asking about writing, though, and what it had to do with
sure.
that free-form writing. When I was in Vietnam, it didn't take me very long to realize, there's a book here. So I started writing my Vietnam novel right then. When I was there, I'd send these long pages home, and when I got back, I took a 30-day leave and did nothing but whip that into a book shape and sent it off to Kesey's agent, Sterling Lord, to see if we could get a sale.
Who Shot the Water Buffalo?
That's it.
Can you talk about just a couple of specific, just for someone like myself who's been, essentially that was the starting the slouching towards Gomorrah for our country, is getting engaged in that quagmire, and ever since then things have changed from a war perspective. This was, can you talk about a couple of seminal moments where when it dawned on you that you said, well, I got content for a book?
Well, it didn't take long at all. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I like to write about, the kind of stuff that was going on around me, and putting it into a novel form, making up the characters, but using the scenes and the settings that were there. Yeah, it was a natural. And I also was doing it in that way you talk about. I'd go in the evening into the squadron office and hit the typewriter and just bang away at just whatever came out of me, without trying to put anything, together in my mind ahead of time. And so it was a real good time. The thing that happened, by the time we got to New York in '64, and I talked to my agent about the book, and he had recommendations for it, and I said, okay, so I took the box. In those days, it was all manuscripts, no Word documents that you send over the internet. And so I took the box back, and we were so into another scene then that I didn't get back. One of the things you asked about was Kesey and me collaborating on stuff. Right from the get-go, when we first met, we started making tapes together. We'd sit in the dark and get high and with microphones, and we'd rap just whatever into a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And doing this thing of trying to, off the wall, off the cuff, come up with stories and plots and characters and situations, and then later listen to it and see if we thought we had any ability in this direction. And then in '64, when Cassidy came on to drive the bus and we were taping everything, we were really able to do this really well, because by then we had also got the movie cameras, and we were not only doing it and taping it, we were filming it as well. And we were going to make a movie. This is what we thought then at the time. Well, we did. We were movie makers. We had this movie that we were driving around in America, stopping in places in America, just out of the wall places, off the beaten track places. It was all two-lane highways then, and mingle with the people and get out and play our instruments. The Merry Band of Pranksters was actually a band. We all played instruments, and our form of music was nonverbal communication. And so we would get it on with these people there, and we always had a wonderful scene, and we'd tape the whole thing, and then we'd leave and go off tootling and fluting, and they'd be waving and shouting, and that would be a scene in the movie. And then the other scenes would be what happened in the bus when we were traveling. And when we got done, we'd put it all together. This would come out on the big screen, and it would be a new kind of movie. It had never been seen before, a kind of a half-fiction, half-real documentary hang of orange juice laced LSD.
This is, I'm already tripping out. Wait, hold on, because you're already hitting on these themes of my show. I'm obsessed with nonverbal communication on the bandstand, because Miles Coltrane used to come up to Miles when he first joined his band and would say, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" And Miles would just turn his back on him. And it finally dawned on Coltrane that it was like, "Oh, you hired me because you want me to be myself and just play what I feel." And so it wasn't like we're such a verbose society. We hang on words now. People are so offended by words. And you're talking about, so you just went from you and Kesey in the dark, seeing if you had any talent, and then you're on the bus talking. What do you mean by nonverbal communication? Can you give an example of that with the people you would interact with?
Yeah, someone would be on his instrument playing da da ba dee doo ba ba, and then somebody else would go ba go dee dee la da ba ba, and then somebody else come up, hey, whoa, you mean da da? Yeah, do I go you better what you mean? I go eat it.
So it was verbal, but it was just it wasn't a dialect or anything. You're just riffing.
Well, not only that, but we're doing it with instruments too.
So you played, I mean, I'm not saying professionally, but you were a trombone. I mean, who was the multi-instrumentalists in the Pranksters? Who could play instruments?
Well, the most talented was Gretchen Fetchen, who played the piano, and she had played since she was a kid and everything, so she could really play well. Kesey played the clarinet, and I played my trombone, of course, and then we had a saxophone, and then we always had drums. George Walker was really the drummer. And in guitars, we didn't really get into guitars till later because they're not really good for, like a circus group.
It sounds like a Dixieland circus group. I mean, just minus the banjo. You had a trap. Who's the trap drummer? You said? Is he still?
George Walker. Yeah.
Is he still with us?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh God, this is what I'm talking about, dude. Babbs, we are longing for this now in society for my children and future generations. There's nothing like this going on.
Yeah, there is.
Tell me.
You just don't see it. You don't know about it. It's all so under the radar and happening with kids and young people who are doing it all by themselves, having their little festivals out in the woods and that. And you don't. This Zane Kesey did a wonderful thing in 2014. He did a 50th year bus trip with Further and went all the way across country and back, going to all these places. It's all going to come out in a movie here pretty quick. I can't remember what it's called. And you really realize, holy mackerel, this is quite a large tribe out there still doing the work and still carrying on the work.
Can you, without giving away parts of the movie, I mean, how was that validated to you? Because let's be very clear. LSD was legal when you were doing this. It's no longer legal. So, I mean, and we also are living, listen, we live in a society now where if you have the money, you can get away with anything. But if not, it's a police state. So it's a very different time, Ken. And I just want you to...
everybody knows that, but people in the know how to live under the cop radar, too. I mean, they get high, but they're not flouting it. They're off doing it by themselves, and they're not showing off. And they're also not selling, probably, or into the commercial end of it, just in the using end of it. And so there's a lot of that going on, and things are loosening up now like crazy. Like here in Oregon, since they legalized marijuana, geez, oh man, suddenly all the people that are growing pot and smoking pot and everything just do it. You can do it.
Hold on, I'm sorry, did I miss the boat? I know Washington State was legal. It's legal in Oregon now?
Oh yeah, it has been for since January, I think. In Colorado, and now Florida's working on it. Yeah, this is good. The real hang-up is the federal government still treating marijuana as a Class 1 narcotic. They're going to change that too.
So can you talk about witnessing death in Vietnam and how you turned that into how you overcame that? I mean, I have to believe it was jarring, especially if you were flying a helicopter and having to pick up troops or people that were maimed and injured. It was probably the most eye-opening experience you had at that point. Can you share a seminal moment of that?
Well, it was jarring, but we were jarheads, Marines. And so I don't know. It's part of life, really. Death and blood and guts and broken and maimed bodies. You do all you can, like when we were in the helicopters, to help them out if we could. We were picking them up. And I don't know. I've lived around farm animals and seen a lot of that all my life. So, it's hard, but you got to accept it. You can't let it hang you up, You can't drag along a big bag of package of guilt or worry or fret or any of that shit. You got to keep moving on all the time and with positive state of mind. Old Trump, he talks about building a wall. The wall you need to build is in your mind. You need a wall that keeps out all the bad thoughts, all the thoughts of lust and greed, and anger and revenge and all that. And it turns out it's not a wall so much as it is. It is a wall, but the wall is not made up of bricks and mortar. It's made up of positive, loving thoughts and actions and that kind of thing, so that you have your head full of the good stuff. There's no room for the bad to get in.
What kind of stuff should, you're talking to everybody out there in the world, when you talk about happy thoughts and love, some people are caught up in you talked about people in the know, but there's a lot of people that are just being brainwashed because they're getting information from just very few sources now, and we're almost awash in too much information. What are the happy thoughts that you think should be within the wall?
Well, the first thing is education. The prime reason for education is to teach you to think for yourself, and also to teach you how to recognize what is true and what is false, and then to reject the false and stick with the true. And a lot of people aren't getting that education because it's not taught, for one reason. And it's the happy thoughts. Well, the happy thoughts are the thoughts you think about your friends and your neighbors and even people that you're with. You think nothing but good thoughts about them. I mean, people can do you bad turns, but you don't want to let that bother you. You know, they're just people. We all are falling all the time. It's a material world we live in. We're material people. And part of the game, or part of the situation is, if we were perfect, we'd be angels. We wouldn't be here. But we're here to do something, and we're here to learn something. And as you get older and go through life and you begin to understand this, you work more and more on the things that are good, the things you can accomplish that, to help people out all the time and to not look down on anybody, you know. And when you see a drunk vomiting in the gutter, you don't say, oh, that bad guy or anything like that. You say, there, but for the grace of God goes I, because, you know, any one of us could go down. I mean, how many do we know who have gotten into some kind of drugs and have become addicted? And addiction is a very serious sickness, you know. It's not, you know, like somebody's bad, you know.
I mean, you're just tapping into these themes on my show. I mean, I talked to Steve Gadd or any of these heavy studio cats who literally lost everything to drug addiction, but yet they overcame it. They got stronger, and ultimately they had friends that, like you said, non-judgmental people that were willing to give chances. And you know, he's doing his thing.
Well, here's the deal.
Yeah,
we're all fucking up all the time.
Right.
But you can't let it hang you up. As you go through a day and you make your mistakes and all that, when you wake up the next morning, you don't want to dwell on that, you know, and think you can change it. In fact, one of the worst things, I fall into it all the time, is thinking about things I did when I was 10 years old. How I should have done it better, how I would have done it better. I think, what are you doing, man? God damn it. Get out of 10-year-old life and get back into your 80-year-old life and work now.
Well, I mean, you're as sharp as all get out, but I really understand the idea of letting go, and I wonder, people harp on things, or they sort of they fuck up, and then they just dwell on it. And did the legal and purest form of LSD and the quantity and the quality of it, do you believe that it really allowed you to not only see your faults and shortcomings, but the introspection to realize that you're not going to go through life feeling guilty about fucking up every day?
Well, I've come to that conclusion on my own. I mean, the LSD may have influenced, but when I took LSD, it was never introspection or any of that kind. It was going places where I had not imagined ever existed, and scenes that that were just wonderful and awful at the same time. And also the ability I found to go into your body, not your mind, and travel through your body and learn all your organs, and even connect to the DNA strand and be able to roam up and down the DNA strand and see that future, past, and present. They're all contained within that. It's a lot like physics, quantum physics, you know, which Einsteinian thing is the same thing, you know, where it's out there in a world which has no boundaries. It's the whole thing of expanded consciousnesses. Then you see the beauty in the worst, and you're able to understand people and the world and the connections that go on. I remember one time the best vision I had was, I wasn't even high on anything, but I don't know, I just was looking out there and I could see everything shimmering, everything and vibrating, and I realized, oh, it's all vibrations, and the wood and stuff is vibrations very tight together, and the air is vibrations that are very wide. It only lasted like 10 minutes, but I thought, oh boy, I could reveal something. That was good.
Can you go deeper into this future, past, and present? Because people are using fundamentalist or traditional religions to cope with this, or even fortune tellers. But yet you're accessing it through, serious, lysergic LSD. I mean, can you talk about something that a seminal trip where you can fuse the future, the past, and the present, and make it coherent to square cats that probably need to microdose a little bit?
Well, I think it's probably a personal experience, each thing like that for each person. And this just happened to be my revelation, but it also goes with, like you talk about writing now. Writing can jump, and even movies, from one scene to another scene that was in the present or the future, or the past. And if you can make the jumps with a connecting of some kind, it's okay, and people can understand it. I talk a lot, mostly to high school students, oddly enough, who are reading Kesey and studying Kesey, and they want me to come and talk about him. And I always ask them, do you want to have a psychedelic experience? And they always say yes. I said, good, that frees me, because if I lose myself in my talk and jump to another subject right away, I said, you just go along with it.
Right. But, Kesey was on his clarinet. You were playing the bone. You had my man on drums. Tell me his name again?
George Walker.
Walker on drums. And then this beautiful piano player as well. But when you came back from Vietnam and you had been on the bus and doing the movies in and out of the bus, and you were looking for places to show the movie and play our music, was the reason the Grateful Dead propelled it? Because even though they weren't real musicians at the time, I mean, why couldn't you just play the music? Why was it the Dead that propelled it to the ethos?
Well, because we never played songs. We didn't know any songs, and we never rehearsed or anything like that. But the Grateful Dead, oh, are you kidding me? They were true musicians. Phil Lish was classical trained, and Jerry, he played since he was a little kid. All those guys. And when we met them, they were just guys that we met, and they played around Palo Alto there. But then when we started, what was happening was we were working on our movie. We were trying to edit it ourselves at Kesey's place in La Honda, and people would hear about it. We'd work on the movie for a week, and on Saturday night we'd show what we had worked on, and people started hearing about it and showing up there. And it got to be too big for the house, a mess that was left, and a thing that went on all night with people there getting drunk and carrying on. So we started renting little halls and stuff, and doing it there. We'd show our movie there, and we'd play our music. And the Grateful Dead guys, at that time, they were the Warlock. Before that, the Jug Band. They came around, and they just started playing with us. So they're playing, and they liked it, because it wasn't like a regular gig where they had to do songs and had to play for a certain time. If they wanted to play, they played, and if they didn't want to play, they didn't play. Stop in the middle or something. It was that kind of free form, nothing planned thing that grew into the acid test, and the Warlocks became the Grateful Dead, and it started to snowball pretty good until we all got busted, and Kesey went on the lam, and he was going to take the heat for everybody because the bus was at his house, and he faked his suicide and took off for Mexico, And we were doing the acid tests in L.A. at the time, and on the night before LSD became illegal in California,
in Watts, right? In Watts.
Because up to that time it had been legal. So we all got in the bus and drove to Mexico and went down there for 6 months.
Wait, so
the Grateful Dead went on to become the Grateful Dead. The big time Grateful Dead.
Right. I mean, I didn't want to take away, like, Lesh was a tremendous musician, Garcia steeped in bluegrass. I look at cats like, Bobby grew so much over time. He wasn't a musician to start. Mickey has never been able to keep time. Billy was the drummer. I mean, really, let's be honest. I have so much content on Mickey Hart never being able to keep time with a band. And it's like, I would love you to talk about the Warlocks, like with Kreutzmann, would you just get up and he would and start riffing and he would just start playing drums? Before the acid test, this to me is like absolutely essential in the free form context of, you guys weren't necessarily tripping out, but there was no time signatures, there weren't songs, it was just like totally improv. I'd just love you to talk about that.
Well, what can I say? I think I've talked about it a lot. Those guys didn't do that stuff. They didn't do improv, and Bill Kreutzmann was actually a solid drummer. He learned from this guy, Lee, what's his name, on Perry Lane there. It was his teacher who was a really good drummer.
Who was his teacher?
Kreutzmann.
No, but who was Kreutzmann's teacher?
Oh, Lee something. I can't remember his last name.
Okay.
He lived right next door to Kesey at Perry Lane when we were going to Stanford. So anyway, what were we talking about that? So they never played while we riffed or did our stuff. We never did that. It was always separate. Well, although sometimes, in fact, quite often, we both play at the same time.
How would that work? How did that work? They were plugging in.
We joined in and groove with them, goof with them, because they were, even at that time, into long, just playing, without words. They had a great time. Yeah, we all had a great time.
Well, we got a game on this program called Name That Tune. I want to put this in for you, settle in for a minute, and then we'll come back and break it down for her. All right?
Okay, sure. Open photo booth to a movie. Open photo booth to do a movie. Will I do a movie? Why can't I do a movie?
Music and riffing on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you in part by the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, and we thank them for their support. Go ahead, Mr. Babbs. What do you think that is?
That song there? Yeah, I think that was the Big Beat nightclub in Palo Alto when we were all playing and people were roller skating at the same time.
The Big Beat Club. I've never heard of that club. What was that about?
Well, I don't know. It was a joint in Palo Alto, kind of close to the freeway, where they'd have mostly rock and roll and stuff, but we rented it one night.
That was 8/16/81 MacArthur Court. Ken Babbs, Thunder Machine, on fire, and you're on. I'm going to send you both of these clips because you can download. It's insane. You always found your way in. I want to know when Bill Walton became a merry prankster.
Well, Bill Walton was a long time coming, his basketball career and everything. But he became a Grateful Dead fan and would go to all their concerts that he could. And the first time I met him was at a Grateful Dead concert in Portland when we were all not backstage, in the green rooms talking, and they had the green room staggered up these stairs, so they'd be on different floors. And I was in this room talking with Jerry, and all of a sudden somebody comes in, it's time to go, we got to go. And so everybody got up and we ran out, and all these people were pouring down the stairs. And when I got to the door, this big giant guy, Bill Walton. I recognized him immediately. And I kind of got in his way, and he stopped, and his watch crystal fell on the floor. I reached down and I handed it to him. I said, "Bill, you dropped your contact." We didn't see him too much, but later on, we were going to a book convention in Las Vegas, and we stopped at this motel down there somewhere and picked up Timothy Leary and John Barlow, and Walton was with him. So they got on the bus and they rode down to the book convention with us. And I think that was kind of his first connection with the pranksters. Well, what's really funny is in the last couple of years, Bill has been a broadcaster on the basketball games, and he comes to Eugene to broadcast the University of Oregon. And every time he comes, he gets me tickets to the game, and we go out to dinner afterwards. And we've getting really good, better knowing one another and having a much better time together. He's an exceptional person.
Yeah, well, I that warms my heart because, well, first of all, he was in that show from '81. He was in the audience while you were there. So your legacy goes back, but you never had a chance to. What do you find yourself talking about now? I mean, Bill looks at the Dead as the Grateful Dead as the ultimate team, similar to a basketball team. The sharing, the listening, the passing, the whole. But on a humanistic level, how have you guys bonded even more now?
Well, because he's just a good guy to be around. I mean, he'll talk about everything. He's knowledgeable about so much stuff, and so you can just talk to him, like I used to talk to Jerry Garcia the same way, You just get into talking, you just roam the world in conversation. And with Bill, I could talk a lot of basketball because I played a lot of basketball, and he always got a kick out of it.
Yeah, no, thank you for sparking. Thank you. You played at Miami of Ohio. Who were some of the luminary cats that you went up against?
Well, I guarded Oscar Robertson when we
Get out of here.
Oh, I did.
You guarded Oscar?
Yeah, I sure did.
How did you do it? He fouled out. He fouled out.
Yeah.
I mean, but did you have aspirations to play at a professional level?
Actually, oh God, no. I was like the sixth man on the team. I mean, I played a lot and everything, but I was never a starter. But we had a great team at Miami with guys that were really friendly and got together, and we still see each other every once in a while. And now on Friday, I am flying to Columbus, Ohio, because our whole team from 57 to 58, our championship team, is being inducted into the Ohio Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, that speaks volumes. I mean, it's not a basketball powerhouse. I think Wally Zerbiak might have gone there.
They did.
Yeah, I'm not sure who.
Wally World, and there was another guy too. He played for the Chicago Cubs. I can't remember his name.
The Bulls or the Cubs?
The Chicago Bulls.
The Bulls, yeah.
Hey, so you may have heard of this guy. Our center was Wayne Embry, who became a six-time All-Star.
Yeah, sure.
And won a couple of rings with the Celtics, and president of the Cleveland Cavaliers, general manager. What's really funny right now is Cleveland was his team, but then he got a job at Toronto. He became a head of their outfit that scouted players in Toronto, and he moved to Toronto. And so now, tomorrow night, Toronto and Cleveland, go against each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I'll see Wayne Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and so I'll be able to shoot the shit with him about
Oh, that is so great. I had a flash of Paul Silas for a minute. I gotta get Embry's face in my mind. Well, I mean, do you feel like the game has changed? I mean, that's the big raging debate now that, you hear people like Oscar, bemoaning the fact that people are shooting from half court and draining threes and the physicalities are taken out of the game. But how do you come down on it? I mean, they just broke the record for most wins in a season.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, geez, how can you beat a team like the Warriors? I mean, you talk about Walton's identification with the dead was their ability to pass that ball and work with each other without hesitation. There's a magic that happens when, I'll tell you what it is, it's the lag.
It's when the lag.
Thinking about the game, and you leave thinking about what you're doing, and you leave worrying about anything at all, and you're just in the moment. You're living in that moment, but you're living it with 5 other guys, actually 10. I found the best thing that happened to me in basketball when I was finally playing for the Springfield Industrial League at the age of 38 or something like that, was my ability to keep in my awareness all 10 guys on the floor all the time, with your peripheral vision all the time. Once you can do that, man, you can really move that ball around. And the more the other guys can do that too, is in music, it's whatever the tune is that they're playing, that they're moving around in the same way. And another way a person described it was it's like talking, like the English language, in which words, when people are really grooving on words, the words move around like the moment thing, like a good basketball team passing the ball. But I'll tell you, basketball has not changed ever. I mean, since modern times, really the 50s and 60s and that.
Well, I mean, when I was coming of age in the 80s, I mean, Lane Beer and Barkley were choking each other. I mean, you can't touch people anymore. I mean, that's what people are saying is that.
Kidding me? The game is really rough. God, they're just crashing into each other all the time. They're not letting them do that so much where they always would be.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Larry Bird and Robert Parrish, hammering Lane Beer. That was Walton as the sixth man, and he was taking Danny Ainge to those Grateful Dead concerts.
Yeah.
But no,
that part of it that's good because actually, to me, basketball was always a non-contact sport. And when someone would try to lay his body on you, you have to do a thing you learn like in Zen thing, which you seem to be giving it back, and then you suddenly let it go, and he falls on his face, and you're wide open. You got to know how to do all these different things and not get into that. It's got to do with evil. The way people try to fight evil is by being stronger than the evil. But they don't realize that evil is a force that the more you fight it, the stronger it gets. So the thing you do is you just give it up. You drop off, and the evil goes crashing to the floor. And so it's the same way, a lot of things in life, and basketball is one of them.
No, I think this is important because you just brought up two things. You talked about Walton's love of the dead. We talked about even on those Merry Prankster bus rides, or even now as you look at Cleveland before the coaching change, very isolationist basketball. To me, it all boils down to the ego. And can you control your ego? How do you maintain the ego and the equilibrium so that you can share and make it a beautiful piece of art? And I wanted to know how you ultimately allowed your ego to maintain and not get insecure, because that's really what we're talking about. We fight evil. We want to be stronger than evil. The ego gets in the way. You just said you pull the rug out from under it, it falls apart on its face. But they can't do that because the ego gets involved. Joe Zawinul couldn't play in Weather Report because Miroslav Vitouas, Wayne Shorter, and Alphonse Mouzon, all the music was coming through them. And Zawinul couldn't do it. And so talk about your concept of your ego and how it has evolved and how you have learned to channel it. And if there was ever a point in your life where you struggled with that.
Well, the best thing about the ego is there are more important things than basketball or music or any of this stuff going on, and you can get in those areas and have a good time in them. And if you let your ego get involved in that, well, it's a character flaw, really, in a way. And this is one of the things too, as you go through life in this material world, is you learn then that character is something that you develop. That there is a kind of a rising character in you. That it's funny. I read a thing today in the paper or somewhere where there's always hidden in yourself the real you. The you that you really know you are. But you never get to be that you because of your job and the people you're around and everything, and you have to put on the face for the boss, and we have to be, real somber at the funeral, all that, and so your real you is yearning to become the real you,
right,
external and internal. And so this is one thing that you can do. But like I say, it's education. People have to know about this, what's going on in them, and to know that, well, when you do this, it's your ego standing up and doing it, And I'll tell you, one of the greatest things to wreck somebody's ego is to be humbled, to be really humbled sometime. And eat some humble pie, and you realize, oh my gosh.
Can you personalize it and talk about eating humble pie, Ken Babbs?
And I verbalized, well, yeah, when I'll tell you, we had Kesey really said it well when he said one time that our saving grace was to always fail. He says when we would strive for the big time, for the golden ring, when we would go for the money, and fame was never really a big factor because you could see the problems that came with fame. But to have a lot of money and blah 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 and all that, but every time we'd do something, we'd screw it up, and we would flop, and we would have to slink back to our homes and our families and live the normal life, milking the cows and making hay and growing the gardens and taking the kids to school and doing all that ordinary stuff. And it humbles you, and when I say humble, I don't mean it as a bad thing. I mean it as a real positive thing, as to be humbled. Sometimes, the fates or whatever you call it, give you a good swat on the behind, and you really need it.
When did that happen? Can you point to a time in your life when that happened?
Well, I can point to a few, but, it usually involved me with dealing with record companies or movie people or something like that, or even book people, and getting the shaft and not having it go the way I wanted it to, or not at all, and having to, like I say, just eat it and go back to regular life. And that it humbles you in a positive way because it teaches you about the way the world is and the way a lot of the people in the world work. Who are in it for everything they can get, and they to fleece somebody else is a triumph for them, and all that. So it finally comes to the point where you realize, or we realize here in Oregon, that we are rubes here in Oregon, and people from the East Coast and all these other places are always coming here and fleecing us out of our land, our trees, our our wealth, our water, everything, and we go for it because, of all the benefits of the community, the money that's going to pour in, all that. It never happens like that. And so we realize we've been fleeced, and we have to slink off and say, we're not going to do that again. But as rubes, we forget about it, and we become suckers again. And so I finally have realized that we are not only rubes, we are God's chosen rubes. This is our bet, to be fleeced all the time and to come up smiling and laughing about it, because I realize over a period of time it has given me the best materials for my books and my stories and my scenes.
Well, that's extremely invigorating. I love that. I just think that is absolutely, and it's not talked enough about in any medium, any corporate media structure. You never hear about this kind of stuff, and it's really it's unfortunate because. Like I said, if you're not seeking, then you're going to fall into this. You're going to fall into this trap. I just interviewed Neil Cassidy's daughter, Jamie, over the weekend. She said that when Neil was teaching them how to drive, he didn't believe in using the brakes. He never used brake. I mean, it was he drove that bus. Did you ever get behind the wheel?
Oh yeah, I've driven the bus a lot. Not so much on that trip, but later on.
I also, this idea of you're a sound engineer on top of being everything else that we've talked about. Can you put into lay terms what you did in order to not create distortion at the acid tests with the speakers?
Not create distortion?
It says here.
I was always working to create distortion.
Of course you were. No, but right. But I mean, make it in a palatable way for people's ears.
Well, the Grateful Dead had their own PA mixer, and microphones that they used just for the band. So we had our setup, which would be speakers, and we had our tape recorders, and we had our microphones and our setup also, with the instruments and all that. And we experimented with sound a lot for our different effects. One of the best things we came up with was the figure-8 lag, which was 4 speakers and 2 tape recorders and 4 microphones. We had microphones on the speakers. We had microphones we were using. And then we'd run it through the tape recorder through 2 recorders at once on a real long line. It'd be a reel to the left, and then through that tape recorder, then way over into another tape recorder, and then the take-up reel over that. So we could be recording on one and playing back on the other, running that through the sound system and sticking it back in again and everything. We used to get some really tremendous effects.
Was Dan Healy a good bass player?
I never knew him as a bass player. I knew him as an engineer. He and what's her name?
Betty Cantor.
Betty, yeah.
Nice. So, because Healy was in a band. He was the bass player. He was a bass player, but then eventually he succumbed to Phil Lesh. The only other one thing I wanted to ask you is that you talk about creating this. All this sort of spontaneous improvisational, music in conjunction with verbal riffing and whatnot. But were you into cats like Moondog, or did you go to a lot of electronic soundscape stuff that was happening in the San Francisco State area? The electronic music of that time period. Who did you get off on?
We never paid much attention to it. Moondog we liked him. He was a good character.
Did you ever?
We had a friend named Don Buchla, who he and Moog invented the synthesizers.
Sure.
And so Don, we worked with him, and he had a setup at the Trips Festival where we combined ours up on the balcony, and I got to work with the stuff he made. He had this neat keyboard that it was just a flat piece of stuff, but you ran your fingers along it, and it would create all the different sounds on it. And he had 10 speakers around the balcony. The balcony went 3/4 way around the room, and you could move the sound through those speakers, like that, and do all kinds of neat effects.
Well, Ken, I was just it was just an honor to connect with you. We just burned through a little over an hour, and I was hoping that there was. Maybe down the road we could pick up on part 2 because there's a few more things I wanted to get to with you.
Yeah, maybe sometime. I'm working on a book now, and I'm pretty much turning down. This was good. I didn't mind doing this, but interviews and appearances and stuff like that, because every time I do it, it knocks me off my pins for a while. It takes me a while to get back on my.
No, I don't want to knock. I want you dancing on a pin, but truthfully, I also am curious about. I wanted you to have a good time today, but I also, if I can reveal some new information for the audience as well. This is going to run live worldwide on May 28th, and I'll make sure you get a link to that and everything. But go shoot some jumpers with Wayne Embry this weekend, man. It was whenever you catch up with him. But I really had a ball. Thank you, man.
That's okay. Can you send me a tape of this or?
I'll send you a reel-to-reel of this stuff. Oh, by the way, of course, I'm going to send. Of course, I'll send it to you tonight. But also, do you have any of those tapes of you and Kesey woodshedding in the dark.
His daughter, Sunshine Kesey, has all the tapes. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them at her place.
Unbelievable.
She's keeping them safe. You know, his stuff all got sold to his archives got sold to the University of Oregon Library, so they'd have a safe place. But they're only dealing with printed stuff, paper stuff. They're not dealing with any of the tapes or any of the movies or any of the videos, and there's tons of that.
Well, wow.
Someday these libraries are going to wake up and they're going to have, well, it's got to do with money. They can't afford to do it now. But, you know, the University of Santa Cruz, Cal Santa Cruz, has all the Grateful Dead stuff.
Sure. Well, can you just tease the audience about what you're writing about now?
I'm writing a book called Cronies, which is all about the adventures that I had with Kesey and Neil Cassidy and the pranksters and our friends, starting with when I met Kesey at Stanford in 1959, or 58, fall of 58, and then ending when he died in 2001. And it's huge.
I can't even imagine. My God. Well, maybe some clip from this interview will wind up in there if you know.
Well, you know, that's why I like to go over these interviews and see if I've said something that in the interview that I could use.
I want to know. Yeah. Well, you know, we'll stay in touch, Babbs. But much love to you, brother. It was so great to talk to you, man.
Okay, but I got to tell you this: that it's not fiction and it's not a memoir. It's something called a burlesque, which is a legitimate literary form, and the definition is a historical occurrence embellished with inventions and exaggerations.
Oh, I dig that, man.
That's me.
Talk to you soon, Ken.
Thank you.
Later on.
Okay.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you all in a little bit.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.